Imagine a situation where the only thing keeping you from madness is a horse. The story of 18-year-old Sophia, suddenly uprooted from her familiar life and cast onto a secluded farm, is full of unexpected twists. It is her encounter with the mysterious Pegasus that radically changes her life, and this story is worth sharing. The sun was setting when Sophia's world turned upside down. After moving to the countryside, to the middle of nowhere, a feeling of protest overwhelmed her. The silence, the endless fields, and the monotony weighed heavily on her. Sophia had always strived to understand the incomprehensible. Her father, an engineer, had received a job offer he called the chance of a lifetime. Her mother, charmed by the idea of rural life, saw the move as an opportunity to fulfill her dream of owning a farm. For Sophia, it felt like the end of the world. She found no beauty in the cows grazing in the pasture or the smell of the earth. Her comfort zone had been taken from her. At first, slow internet was her main problem. Attempts to connect with friends required a patience she didn't possess. Messages stopped coming, and she found herself isolated. Her phone, once her link to the world, became a useless burden. She wandered through the old house with its creaking floorboards or sat on the porch, staring at the horizon. One day, when despair almost consumed her, she noticed movement in the pasture. There was a horse, solitary and special. Its brown coat gleamed in the sun, and its black mane fluttered in the wind. But most striking were its eyes, deep, almost human, full of longing. "Who is that?" she asked her father, who was working in the barn. He sighed and replied, "That's Pegasus." He was one of the best stallions, strong and agile, but stubborn. No one can get near him. Sophia persisted, "Why?" Her father explained that Pegasus was a competition horse but had thrown his rider, and since then, he had become distrustful. These words resonated deeply with Sophia. In the horse, she saw a reflection of her own loneliness. That night, she couldn't sleep, thinking about Pegasus's eyes. It seemed to her that he held secrets she needed to uncover, that he was the key to understanding herself. The next day, Sophia went to the pasture. Pegasus raised his head when he saw her. There was no anger in his gaze, but no acceptance either, just wariness. "Hello," she whispered. The horse didn't move, but turned his ears. Sophia remained standing, waiting for him to trust her. There was deep meaning in this encounter. Pegasus seemed like a mirror, reflecting her fears, insecurities, and loneliness. And for the first time since the move, she felt something new, a spark of hope. In that moment, something within her changed. She wondered if she could win Pegasus's trust and find a connection with herself. But a sense of danger also pursued her. What story was hidden behind this horse? Where would this lead her? Sophia felt that Pegasus would change her life forever, but she didn't know if she was ready for the answers he might provide. On that memorable day, a gust of wind swept across the endless field, bringing with it the rich scent of sun-baked earth and trampled grass. There was something captivating in the surrounding nature, as if an invisible force was drawing her in, uniting two solitudes. Pegasus, as usual, stood in his place, but this time, there was a change in his demeanor. He wasn't just looking, he was studying her, as if trying to unravel a mystery. In his dark, unfathomable eyes, there was such depth and focus that everything else ceased to exist, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. Involuntarily, her hand reached for the rough wooden fence, and her steps slowed. She didn't want to startle him, or herself. Her heart pounded wildly, each beat echoing through her body, reminding her that life went on. "Hello, Pegasus," she said softly, almost a whisper. The horse tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand the meaning of her words. A tense anticipation hung in the air. And then, he took a step forward. The movement was fluid, cautious, without any hint of abruptness. Her breath caught in her throat from the unexpectedness. What was this? A sign of trust, or sudden fear that would make him retreat? But nothing happened. Pegasus simply stopped, still at a distance, but much closer than ever before. It was as if he was giving her a chance to prove herself worthy of his trust. For several weeks, she came to this pasture every day. There was something special about this ritual, bringing a stool, sitting by the fence, and simply observing. At first, she barely dared to speak. Her friends? Perhaps they had simply waved her off and moved on. Pegasus leisurely chewed grass, but his sensitive ears turned to every word she uttered. And it wasn't that she blamed them. Who would want to spend time on a recluse living in the middle of nowhere? The words flowed little by little, like water from a loosely closed tap, and Pegasus listened intently. Perhaps it was just an illusion, born of the surrounding silence, but there was something in his behavior that made her feel different. He wasn't just a horse, but a confidant, a reflection, a companion in a place where she felt utterly alone. One day, she brought an apple, cut into 2 halves. Her father had suggested the idea, knowing horses liked treats. When she came to the pasture, Pegasus stood in his usual pose, wary, yet calm. She extended her hand with the treat, feeling her nerves stretched to their limit. "Here you go, buddy, this is for you." For a moment, the horse froze. His eyes studied her outstretched hand, his breathing deep, almost audible. Then he slowly took a step, then another, and another. When his soft lips touched her palm, a wave of inexpressible emotions washed over her body. This small gesture meant so much. In that touch, there was a tenderness that reminded her of the beauty of simple things. People talk so much, but often forget the essential. Pegasus was just there, offering what she hadn't even realized she so desperately needed. After that, their relationship changed. Now, he would wait for her by the fence. Of course, treats played a role, but it wasn't just about that. An invisible bond had formed between them, impossible to express in words. She began to stroke his neck, first timidly, then more confidently. The warm fur beneath her fingers and the unique scent, a mixture of earth, sun, and something else, elusive, became an unexpected comfort. "You know," she began one day, running her hand along his mane, "sometimes I feel just like you, alone, trying to understand my place in this world. But maybe we don't need to fit in? Maybe we just need to be ourselves." He turned his head, and their gazes met. It seemed he understood that there was meaning in her words. And in that moment, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of belonging. But it wasn't just about her. Something about Pegasus truly intrigued her, something she desperately wanted to understand. What had made him so suspicious and distant? What stories were hidden behind the scars he carried? She knew he had competed, but what else was behind it? These questions haunted her, drawing her closer to him each day. There was a burning desire to break down the barriers, to know who he truly was. But there was also fear. What if he never let her in? What if all her efforts were in vain? She didn't know how much time she spent in that pasture, lost in her thoughts and words that were never spoken aloud. But as the sun set and shadows deepened, she felt something change within her. Pegasus's presence gave her strength, instilled hope that perhaps she could cope with the emptiness that seemed to have consumed her since they arrived here. And then she asked the question that might change everything. "Who are you, Pegasus? And what do I need to do for you to trust me?" That day, the air felt electric. There was something unusual, a premonition she couldn't explain, but it seemed to permeate everything around, like a quiet whisper. Pegasus stood in the pasture, but his movements were more tense, as if he sensed something too. And perhaps he was right. She had spent a lot of time trying to get close to him, to understand who he was and what he was hiding. But, truthfully, at that moment, she didn't know if she was ready for what she was about to learn. Words escaped her lips in a muffled greeting, "Hello, buddy," but in that softly spoken phrase, there was an undisguised mix of curiosity and vulnerability. In response, Pegasus raised his head, and his gaze met hers. The intensity of his stare made her heart pound. The graceful horse remained still, as if waiting for her to continue. "Well," she said, not expecting an answer, "it turns out you don't trust anyone either, do you? Ever since I got here, everyone around me is so wrapped up in their own concerns that they don't seem to notice my feelings at all. Or maybe it's better that way? Maybe it would be simpler if the emptiness just swallowed all the space between us." Did he understand her? Or was it just her mind desperately trying to find some meaning where there was none? But before these thoughts could fully consume her, something unexpected happened. Pegasus took a step forward, just one, but for her, it was like crossing an invisible chasm, closing the distance between them. "That's it," she whispered, feeling her fingers clench convulsively around the wooden fence. "Step by step, right?" In the following days, a subtle change began to emerge in their relationship. It wasn't just about physical proximity, but also about the space they were gradually learning to share. The girl talked, and Pegasus listened attentively. She brought him juicy carrots or ripe apples, and he accepted the treats with that almost regal grace that seemed inherent to him. But at the same time, a vague unease lingered within her, as if Pegasus carried an unbearable burden on his shoulders, a burden he couldn't share, and she didn't know if she had the strength to alleviate his suffering. Who hasn't felt that strange sensation of being one step away from something important, yet at the same time infinitely far from the goal, as if an invisible barrier has been erected between you and your desire, impossible to overcome no matter how hard you try? This was the feeling that haunted her in her interactions with Pegasus. And at the same time, she felt that he was experiencing something similar, as if they were both trapped, in their own cages, looking at each other through bars, not knowing how to open their wounded souls. Subtle, barely noticeable signs of the past, hidden in his every movement, spoke of endured suffering. "What happened to you?" she whispered almost silently. Pegasus, of course, didn't answer, but the way he turned his head made her believe that he somehow understood her question. And in that moment, a breakthrough occurred in her mind. It was no longer just about earning his trust, but about learning to trust herself. But how can you learn to trust after being betrayed? How do you allow yourself to let go of fear when everything inside screams for the need to protect yourself? These questions tormented her every night as she revisited her encounters with Pegasus in her memories. Did he think the same? Perhaps, deep in his soul, the same doubts, the same fears lurked? It was then that she made a decision to do something she had never dared to do before. She decided to take a risk. The next morning, she came to the pasture with a thought firmly planted in her mind. Pegasus, as always, was there, but his posture showed a greater sense of relaxation, of openness. "Today's the day, buddy," she murmured, picking up a rope she found in the old barn, left by her father. She understood that everything could go wrong, that everything they had built could collapse in an instant, but even so, she had to try. She approached slowly, each step deliberate, her breath catching with excitement. Pegasus watched her, his dark eyes fixed on her. When she was close enough, she extended her hand, showing him the rope. "I won't hurt you," she said, trying to remain calm. He snorted softly but didn't recoil. It seemed he was testing her, seeing how far she was willing to go. And she went. Slowly, she draped the rope around his neck, feeling her fingers tremble as she touched his warm skin. He didn't stir, but his breathing quickened, almost in unison with her own. "There," she whispered, stepping back slightly but not releasing the rope. Pegasus turned his head and looked at her. Something in his eyes reflected what she couldn't understand. Was it trust, fear, or perhaps a mixture of both? That day, she gave her first command, "Come with me, buddy." And to her astonishment, he walked. His steps were uncertain, timid, but he walked. And with his every movement, she felt something breaking within her, or perhaps, on the contrary, being restored. In that moment, Pegasus seemed to tell her that she could trust him too, and for the first time in a long time, she believed it. But what awaited them? What would this new bond mean for them? These questions remained unanswered for now, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to look into the future, because now they were embarking on this journey together, and that was all that mattered. The day was filled with a soft, gentle warmth that seemed to slow everything down. Pegasus seemed to feel it too. He stood by the fence, waiting for her, as he did every day. But today, something was different. She knew what she was going to do, but her whole body trembled with the anticipation of the unknown. "Today's the day, buddy," she whispered. Her soft voice was almost lost in the gentle breeze. He raised his head, his ears alertly turned towards her, as if trying to catch every word. An atmosphere of unspoken understanding arose between them, something she had never experienced with any person, let alone an animal. Pegasus was special, and this uniqueness drew her in, like a mystery she was determined to solve. When Sophia shared her plan to ride Pegasus, her father couldn't help but laugh. He had protected this horse for years, not allowing anyone to approach him. "Sophia, do you seriously think he'll let you do that?" he doubted. But an unwavering confidence lived within the girl. She felt that she was different from those who had unsuccessfully tried to tame Pegasus. She felt a special connection with this animal, and he seemed to understand it too. With the saddle in her hands, Sophia walked towards Pegasus, trying to remain calm. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. The horse looked at her with his deep, dark eyes, remaining motionless. Approaching his head, Sophia extended her hand, letting him feel her presence. "Trust me, Pegasus," she whispered, gently running her hand along his soft mane. As she placed the saddle, her fingers trembled slightly. That barely perceptible sound seemed to amplify the tension hanging in the air. Pegasus shifted slightly but didn't resist, as if testing her intentions, just as she was testing his. The moment Sophia was in the saddle, the world around them seemed to cease to exist. There was only her, Pegasus, and the sound of their beating hearts. Gradually, the horse relaxed, his steps becoming firmer and more confident. The wind caressed her face, played with her hair, and the fresh scent of grass mingled with the warmth of the sun. This moment transcended all words, and Sophia knew she would never forget it. "You can do it, buddy," she whispered, leaning slightly forward. In response, Pegasus broke into a steady trot, his untamed energy flowing like a controlled river. Every movement of the horse felt like a silent dialogue between them, an exchange of trust that needed no words. Sophia wasn't just riding Pegasus, she was communicating with him on a profound level. During this ride across the fields, memories Sophia had tried to forget began to return, moments when she felt invisible, unspoken words, lost connections. In some inexplicable way, each of these memories dissolved into the rhythm of Pegasus's hooves hitting the ground. The horse wasn't just physically carrying her, he was freeing her from something she hadn't even realized she needed to be free of. But, as with any journey, there came a moment of respite. They stopped near a small stream. Sophia dismounted, her legs still trembling from the experience. Pegasus lowered his head to drink water, his breathing deep and rhythmic. The girl sat on the grass, watching him. He was more than just a horse, he was a walking paradox, wild yet restrained, strong yet vulnerable. Sophia wondered what it was like to fully trust someone, to give herself unconditionally, knowing that the other also carried fears and scars. This was what she felt next to Pegasus. He wasn't perfect, just like herself, but together they found something that transcended their imperfections, something that made sense even when everything else seemed meaningless. As the sun began to set, Sophia mounted Pegasus again. The ride back was calmer and more contemplative. They no longer needed to prove anything to each other. They already knew and felt everything. In this shared silence, Sophia found a peace she could only have dreamed of before. When they approached the stable, Sophia's father met them. His face showed surprise and, "You did it," he said softly, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Sophia just smiled, slid from the saddle, and buried her nose in Pegasus's neck. "It's not just about taming him, Dad. It's about trust, and being worthy of that trust." Pegasus snorted, as if agreeing, and Sophia laughed. But deep down, she knew those words were not just for her father, but for herself. She realized that the trust the horse had in her was a reflection of the trust she was learning to have in herself, and that, perhaps, was her most important achievement. The next morning, golden light streamed into Sophia's room through the curtains. She heard the gentle sounds of the farm, the rustling of leaves, the distant singing of birds, and, very close by, Pegasus's footsteps in the pasture. The girl rose with an unusual calmness. Something had changed, and perhaps for the first time in a long time, she felt she belonged to this place. She walked to the window and saw Pegasus watching her from afar, as if he knew this day would be special. It was amazing how the horse sensed what she felt, as if their souls were connected by invisible threads. In a few weeks, Pegasus had become more than just a companion for Sophia. He had become her anchor, her strength, and, in a way, her mirror. After breakfast, Sophia headed to the stable. Her father was there, working with tools, but he stopped when he saw her. His eyes shone with a mixture of pride and curiosity. "You don't give up," he said with a restrained smile. "Sometimes all we need is to take one more step," Sophia replied, repeating the words Pegasus seemed to teach her every day. Her father nodded and returned to his work, but Sophia knew he understood her. Ever since Pegasus entered her life, there was something special in their silent conversations. Her father, perhaps, didn't express it in words, but Sophia felt his respect for her determination. As she approached the picturesque pasture, Pegasus's graceful figure emerged to meet her. His movements had an ethereal elegance, and each step sounded like a quiet melody, understood only by him. The heroine extended her hand, and the horse confidently pressed his warm, velvety nose against her fingers. This simple yet deeply meaningful gesture seemed to convey the weight of the trust placed upon her, filling her heart with unprecedented strength. "Today is an important day, my boy. Are you ready?" she asked softly. In response, Pegasus tilted his head slightly, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. With a deep breath, the girl began to prepare her faithful friend for a longer ride, carefully tightening the saddle straps. A thrilling anticipation grew within her. This wasn't just another ride, it was an encounter with something greater, with changes that were about to happen within her. As they galloped across the endless fields, an incomparable feeling of freedom washed over the heroine. The wind caressing her face, the rhythmic thud of Pegasus's hooves, and the boundless horizon reminded her that the world was vast and full of possibilities, far beyond fears and doubts. The horse ran with inexhaustible energy, bringing an involuntary smile to the rider's face. This moment belonged only to the two of them, pure, simple, and perfect. Stopping at the foot of a hill, which offered a breathtaking view of the entire farm, the girl dismounted and sat on the grass. Pegasus remained nearby, lazily chewing on the lush green. Her gaze fell on the horse's black mane, fluttering in the wind, and she realized how much they both had changed. They came from different worlds, each with their own scars, but found something in each other that allowed them to grow and evolve. "Thank you, Pegasus," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "for showing me that trust is not a weakness, and for teaching me that sometimes all we need is another try." The horse raised his head, and their eyes met. In that gaze, something inexpressible in words was read, a silent understanding that spoke of everything they needed to know. The journey back home was calm and peaceful, almost meditative. Pegasus, like his rider, moved relaxed and easily. At the stable gate, her father was waiting for them again, watching from a distance. This time, he said nothing, only gave his daughter a knowing smile. Later, admiring the sunset from the porch of the house, the girl reflected on everything that had changed since they arrived at the farm. She thought about Pegasus, about the trust they had built, and about how much she had learned about herself. There was something incredible in the realization that even in the most difficult times, life is capable of surprising with the beauty of unexpected connections.